My name's Chris. I'm an alcoholic, and that has to be established for the work to begin. But first and foremost, I want to thank you, Rob, for asking me to come out. Being of service is an integral part of me being sober and staying sober, so I really appreciate you asking me to come out tonight. But I'm not here to come out here tonight and tell you how to drink. I think we all know how to do that. But when I sat in those seats 3.5, almost 4 years now, I always wondered, how did you get sober and how did you stay sober? And that's what I like to focus on, because I came in here to South Florida almost 4 years ago, and I was in a hopeless state of mind and body, and I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol, and I certainly couldn't imagine my life without alcohol. But I was born in Philadelphia. I have 2 older brothers. I had my first drink when I was 11 years old, and my brother, he came home from college, and he's like, "Chris, have you ever had a drink before?" I was like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, you're coming to the age where you're going to start partying." He's like, "I want you to do it safely with me in Mom's house." I'm like, "All right, sounds good." So we mixed up a nice screwdriver, and simply put, I love the effects produced by alcohol. I think I was crying that night. I'm telling my brother how much I love him and how much I love the family, right? And but it's a progressive illness, so it's not like every night after that I'm crushing screwdrivers. It developed, over time, and I had a lot of fun in the beginning and until later down the road. But my alcoholism really ramped up when I went to college, and not just for the most obvious reasons. I got into a series of 3 accidents in a 6-month time period. So I was driving up to college, I flipped my Jeep Wrangler, rolled it 4 times, broke my back. A couple months after that, I accidentally stuck a chainsaw in my leg. I got 14 internal stitches, 26 external, and a couple months after that, apparently, when I black out, I love running my mouth, and I got knocked out at a party. I got sucker punched, and I had my jaw wired shut for 6 months. And here's the insanity of this illness, this malady. So my jaw was wired shut for 6 months. It was only supposed to be wired for 3 months, but this is how, I'm beyond human aid, right? So when you have your jaw wired shut, if you throw up, you'll choke and you could potentially die. So what I would do is, when I was out partying, I would wear wire cutters around my neck. So that way, when I'm drinking and doing whatever, and I had to throw up, I would take my wire cutters, I would cut my wires, I would puke and rally and get them rewired the next day. I mean, I just like to party, right? And that's where it took me. So graduated college, everything was good. I was able to maintain, it was a lot of fun, and then I was maintaining, and then, the different phases of this cycle. Let me preface it with this. Relapse is not a requirement by any means necessary. Unfortunately, it's part of this alcoholic story. First time I went to treatment, I was 27 years old, and I went there to alleviate family concerns. "Mom, don't worry. Papa Dukes, your baby boy's got this. Uncle Bob, no, don't worry. Aunt Diane, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry," right? Did my little 28-day stint in New Jersey, came back home and picked up right where I left off. Now, the second time around, if you hooked me up to a lie detector test and I told you I was never, ever going to drink again, I would have passed with flying colors. And I learned a very valuable lesson, which is the biggest suggestions you pay for are the ones you don't take. And the issue with me is I didn't take all the suggestions. I worked a program called CA, which is Christopher's Anonymous, and I pick and chose what suggestions catered to me. I thought I could get this through osmosis and just show up to meetings and not do the work. I thought recovery could be sexually transmitted, and I ignored the whole, relationships in the first year, and I paid. And, the last time around, it got so dark. This is the way I phrase it, is I was literally dead inside a body that wouldn't die. That's how I felt. And I was just broken down to the knees. And, I came down to South Florida, and what I thought was a curse, that gift of desperation, I hold it as a blessing, because it got me here and where I'm at today. But I came down here, and I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I came down here, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And I went to a nice treatment facility down here, and they had a couple requirements for me to live at the house, which was to get a job, go to 5 meetings a week, and get a sponsor and work the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And listen, I avoided the 12 Steps of AA like I owed it money. I didn't want anything to do with it, and I literally tried every other option. The AA was the last block on the house for me. And after trying every single way possible, my last result, and they say a smart man learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from others. I was a smart man for a very long time, and I tried my way all different times, and it always led me back to the drink. So I came down here, and I got a sponsor. And I asked this man to sponsor. He said, "Yeah, call me every day." And what I'm really grateful to this day is that my sponsor, he simplified this program for me. I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and I was very overwhelmed. I see these, you walk into a meeting and you see these 12 steps and these 12 traditions, and they put this big blue book in front of me, and I'm like, what is all this? Then they're telling me about the 12 and 12 and drop the rock and language of the heart. I'm like, holy shit, I don't even know what I'm doing with my life, and you got all this thrown at me. I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so overwhelmed. But thankfully my sponsor simplified this for me, and he's like, hey Chris, hopefully, I can decipher the difference between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic for you. And he's like, hey Chris, when you drink, he's like, can you quit entirely? I'm like, nah, I can't. He's like, all right. He's like, when you drink, he's like, do you have little control of the amount that you take? And to simplify that, right? He's like, can you safely guarantee your behavior when you have a drink? I'm like, no, I can't. And he's like, all right, Chris, well, if this be the case, then only a spiritual experience can conquer this illness. Okay, so I knew I was an alcoholic. That was that was evident. That was self-evident for sure. So, all right, I'm an alcoholic. You're telling me I need a spiritual experience, which sounds crazy to me. And I asked Marty, my sponsor, I said, well, how do I get that? And the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps. All right, I can do that. It's simple, right? I'm an alcoholic. You're telling me I need to get a spiritual experience, and I'll get it if I work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, honestly, open-minded, and willingly. All right, let's do it, right? And I'll never forget this moment when we sat down for the first time. I can remember like it was yesterday, and I was sitting in my sponsor's living room, and we're sitting down with the book, and sitting across from me, I was like, I couldn't make eye contact when I was like early in sobriety. Like I was filled with shame and guilt of all the things I've done. I've done things that go against every moral fiber in my body, and I couldn't really look him in the eyes, and he's staring at me, and I'm all freaked out. And he goes, Chris, I want you to be honest with me. And I say, yeah, Marty, what do you want to know? And he goes, Chris, do you honestly believe that you can drink successfully? And I was like, drink successfully? And I said, no, Marty, absolutely not. And he looked back right into my eyes like he was staring at my soul, and he said, Chris, well, how the fuck do you want it to end? And I said, whoa. I said, what is this man talking about? And he goes, Chris, do you want to go down that miserable, treacherous road you know it's going to take you? Or do you want to have a shitty 6 to 8 months and a happy, joyous, free life? And when he put it to me like that, I said, yeah, I'll take the shitty 6 to 8 months and a happy, joyous, free life. And I can honestly tell you, sitting here today, that I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I hated hearing that early on in sobriety. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. I'm like, shut up. I'll be on my private plane going to Barcelona, maybe down under in Sydney in Australia, But the reason I can tell you I have a life beyond my wildest dreams is because I have a sense of freedom I've never experienced in my life before. I'm not engulfed in the spiritual malady, and I don't have that obsession of how can I drink and how can I do it successfully? How can I beat the game? Because if you're anything like me, alcohol was my master. It told me when I could go to bed, when I could wake up, could I go to work, could I get through the workday, could I go on that 2-week family vacation, could I go out with my buddies? That is how my life was ran. It revolved around a drink, and it was a miserable way to live. So, and for me, I can only share my experience, right? My first 6 to 8 months was a grind. You know what I mean? I wish I could tell you I walked in the rooms AA and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, and everything was perfect. My experience, it wasn't like that. But that's why perseverance for me was so important. And the definition of perseverance is doing something despite difficulty, but there's a really important second half of that definition, which is doing something despite difficulty or a delay in achieving success. And I love instant gratification. I love mixing up a drink. I like throwing it back and getting that feeling, right? The big book talks about this. I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right? Meaning that when I have my drink, I got this. I'm the man. Everything's gonna be good. And when I'm sober, I'm a scared, frightened little boy. And that's how it was when I was sober. What am I doing with my life? Oh my gosh, playing the victim card. Poor little old me. But when I had my drink, everything was good. I got this. You know what I mean? But and that's how it was for me. So, we sat down. We got into that first step. And listen, the first step is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives were unmanageable. It doesn't say we admitted we were alcoholics. For me, I knew that. But admitting I was powerless, totally different ball game. What does powerlessness look like to me? Even though I could admit that I'm killing myself and all the loved ones around me, I still can't stop. That was powerlessness to me. And it is one thing to admit that you're powerless, but it is a totally different ballgame to accept that you're powerless. But the moment, you hear the acceptance is the key. The moment I fully accepted, I conceded to my innermost self that I was powerless over alcohol, I was a little more open to the solution, and things got a little bit easier for me. And this powerlessness, it's a, what do they say, a double-edged, it's like a triple-edged sword, if that even, and there's 3 phases to it, right? There's the physical component, right? So when I drink alcohol, I develop the phenomenon of craving. I need more and more and more. This isn't normal, but like, if you're anything like me, I'd be at like parties, at a family party, right? And you're like leaving the restaurant, whatever, and you see like all those half-empty drinks on the table, and you're like, you drinking those? Like, what's going on here, right? I just want more once it's in me. Then there's the mental aspect of it, which is when it's not in my body, I just crave it. I have this mental obsession, this great mental obsession of how can I do it, right? And then there's the spiritual aspect of it, that I have this, I learned that I have a spiritual malady. Definition of malady means disease, right? And then I have this disconnect between me and the universe, between my brothers and sisters and between me and my brothers and sisters, right? So, I have this soul sickness, right? And what I tried to do for a long, long time was to fill it up with sex, drugs, money, clothing, anything, jewelry, anything you could think of, right? And I learned that to fix an inside problem with outside materialistic shit just does not work. And so that's one of the important components of, building a relationship with your higher power, whoever you conceive or she to be, to help with that spiritual malady. You get into the second step, right? Which is coming to believe in a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And this is where everyone starts getting uneasy, right? We're like, oh man, here comes the God talk. Simplify it, right? Real simple. The only thing that was required of me when I was on that second step was just the willingness to believe that there was something greater than me. I could do that. I don't know who he is or who she is, what it looks like, smells like, sounds like, but I could get down with the fact that there was something more powerful than me. And that's how it was. My first 6 months of sobriety, my prayers was like, hey God, I want to get to know you better. Please reveal yourself to me. That's all it was for 6 months, day in, day out, day in. And my relationship now with my higher power, who I choose to call God, looks totally different than it was, over 3.5 years ago. And then you get into the third step, right? And the steps are in order for a reason. If you ever look at the steps, it's preparation, execute, preparation, execute, preparation, execute, right? So the second step is coming to believe, and then the third step is, all right, let's turn it over, right? So the third step is turning my life and will over to the care of God as I understand him. The third step, I'm in agreement with the literature where it says it's, the effectiveness of this entire program rests on a good third step, right? And for me, it was easy for me to understand that I should probably not be behind the driving wheel anymore, because my best thinking, my absolute best thinking in life at 30 years old got me in a halfway house, sharing a room with 2 other men on the top bunk. It's where my best thinking got me. So it was pretty evident for me to be like, all right, maybe I should take a step back here, right? And, my sponsor goes, hey, Chris, because I'm turning my life and will over to the care of God. He goes, Chris, you know what the definition of care is? I said, no, I really don't. He had me look it up, right? And the definition of care is the protection, welfare, or maintenance of someone or something. He's like, why wouldn't you want that from something that's more powerful than you? I was like, yeah, I do want that. I was like, but I don't even know your heebie-jeebie, talk of turning life and will. This is a vocabulary I'm not even familiar with. I was like, Marty, I don't even know how to turn my life and will over. I don't understand what you're saying. And he goes, Chris, real simple. Keep simplifying things for me. He goes, Chris, real simple. And he talked about these 4 absolutes. And he said, Chris, as long as you're being honest, you're being pure, you're being unselfish, and you're being loving, you're doing your best to carry out God's will. All right, I'll do that to the best of my ability. I'll be honest, not just with myself, but with the people around me. I'll be pure. I'll be a genuine person. So if I'm in a facility like this and I'm hitting my vape and Jimmy comes over and he's talking about something he's going through, am I just like, oh, I don't give a shit, Jimmy, right? And I just walk away? Or am I like, oh, Jimmy, what's going on? Am I being a pure, genuine person, right? Am I being unselfish, right? I'm a very self-centered, selfish person. And am I being loving, right? Am I treating people the way I want to be treated, right? And I look at those things when I make decisions or I check my motives. I just make sure I'm just being honest, pure, unselfish, and loving. And that's how I do my best to carry out God's will, right? Then you get into a 4th step, right? And it's, you may hear people refer to like, oh my God, it's so much work, right? Putting pen to paper. But I did some crazy things out there to get my next drink. So this really isn't that much work compared to what I used to be doing. But a 4th step is you make a fearless and moral inventory, right? So you write down all your list of your resentments, the people that you hate, people that you've harmed, your fears, and then you make a list of people that you had sexual relations with. It's called your sex conduct, right? And you put all this out on paper. And here, I love analogies. here's what a 4-step's like. Imagine living in a condo, house, apartment, wherever, right? And you live in this house for 10 years. And in the 10 years, you've never vacuumed, you never flushed the toilets, you never took out the trash, you never wiped down the counters, you never done anything. Place is disgusting, right? And then you invite your, boyfriend or girlfriend over, and they come inside and they're like, oh my God. Like, are you all right? What a 4-step is, it's a good house cleaning. So you're taking out the Hoover vacuum cleaner, you're taking out the Swiffer wet jet, you got the Clorox wipes, get a plumber over, clean out the pipes, flush the toilets, take out the trash, and you're doing a good house cleaning. Clean it up, right? Because you're going to be inviting your higher power in eventually down the road, right? The 4-step for me changed my perspective on how I look at life, right? There's a very humbling column called my part and stuff. So I looked at all my resentments, all the people I hated, and then I looked at my part of my part in the situation. And I'll just give one example, but I could give you 30 different stories, but here's one of them. My number one resentment was a woman named Amber, who I hated with every fiber in my body. So I had a good finance job and I, a good career. And I go into work one day, I go into my office, I had a little too much to drink and I fell asleep behind my desk. And my boss comes in and goes, Chris, are you okay? Great manipulator and liar I am. I said, Greg, I'm all right. Got into a car accident last night. I think I have a concussion. After work, I'm planning to go to the doctor. Oh gosh, Chris, your health and safety is our top priority. Why don't you finish the deal you're working on and go home? Bet. No problem, Greg. Then I'll get real loaded up back at home, right? So I finish the deal I'm working on, I'm packing up, I get my little briefcase, I'm walking out of the office, feeling all good. And as I'm walking out, Greg goes, hey, Chris, before you leave, can you come to my office with me? No problem, Greg. Walk into Greg's office. All of HR is there, the CEO's there, the CFO. Got ambushed, right? And make a long story short, I refused a drug and alcohol test, and I got fired and from a fantastic job. And what happened was Amber, who I went to high school with, said, yeah, Greg, one, Chris's car is in the parking lot, not a scratch on it, so I doubt he got into a car accident. And two, Chris is a pretty big drinker, and you may want to look into this. And so she ratted me out, right? So on a 5th step, you tell another man or a woman all the stuff that's on your 4th step. You get it off your chest, right? You get it out to God, you get it off to another man, get it off your chest. And as I'm telling my 5th step, I'm telling him, yeah, I hate Amber. And I told him the story, maybe a little bit more detail that I just told you. And I was like, he's like, Chris, he's like, you hate her? I said, yeah, I hate her. He's like, you're crazy. I'm like, you're crazy, dude. What are you talking about? He's like, Chris, do you realize that Amber's a God-given sent angel? Because if she doesn't rat you out, you're probably 6 feet under. I was like, whoa, that's an interesting way to look at it, right? And there was many different instances on my 4th step were like that allowed me to just take a step back and be like, holy crap, man, wow, Amber is a God-given sent angel. It's absolutely beautiful, and I hated her for a long time for that. So your 5th step, you get everything off your chest, right? Then you go into 6 and 7, which is character defects. And listen, I put down the drink, and I'm still selfish. You look at the 7 deadly sins, lust issues, gluttony. I have a lot of character defects that I certainly need to work on one day at a time. And, I talk about that with my sponsor and make sure I do a daily inventory to make sure I'm not having these character defects flare up, just to make sure that I'm striving to be a better person, really what 6 and 7 comes down to. 8 has made a list of all the persons we harmed, and we're willing to make amends to them, right? So you basically, this is how egotistical I am, right? I was like, Marty, I didn't harm that many people. I was like, I paid my bills to the best of my ability, and I didn't harm that many people. And then he told me about these different harms there are, right? There's spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and financial harm. I loved borrowing money from you and not paying you back. It was like my favorite thing to do. And once I learned about all these different harms, like I can't even fathom the spiritual harm that caused my mother. I mean, I don't like talking to people when I'm drunk, especially not my family, towards the end. And so what would happen is, like, my mom would call me, I'm like, whatever, I'll get back to you, right? And then I'll call her like 3 days later when, when the moment struck, and I'll call her up and she'd be like, Chris, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, Mom, I'm working, I'm trying to build a career here, right? She goes, Chris, I gotta go to bed every night thinking that you're dead, so can you at least just text me and let me know that you're alive? Like, I can't even imagine that spiritual harm, emotional and mental harm that I caused my mother. But this is the beautiful thing of the program, right? Preparation, right? Preparation, made the list, then you execute with step 9. I got to go make direct amends to these people and go face to face with them. And it was simplified for me. Marty was like, hey, this is what you do. You say, I wasn't allowed to say I'm sorry because I said sorry a million times to these people. I had to use the word I apologize, right? I would have to go up and I say, I apologize for this. This is what I do. This is what I did. Did I leave anything out? And what can I do to make it right? And then I shut up. And I did that for every single person that was on there. And my experience was 90% of my amends went extremely, extremely well. And that was cleaning up the wreckage of my past, like, took a lot of weight off my shoulders, which was a beautiful thing. And then you get into the 10th step, and you do this like spot inventory, right? So the 10th step is really beautiful, like upon awakening and when you retire at night, you do certain things. But one of the biggest things that I took away from a 10th step is throughout the day, I still get irritable, restless, and discontent, still get angry. I'm a human being, right? But the 10th step taught me this little 3-step process that I do throughout the day. It just happened last week. My boss called me up and he was like, Chris, he shared his opinion, I shared my opinion. I hung up, I'm like, this dude, right? And so here's my little 3-step process when I'm angry, irritable, restless, and discontent throughout the day, because I still get like that from time to time. I stop. I pause when I'm agitated. I just stop. And I throw one up to the big man or big woman, whoever, right? And I say, yo, help me out. Remove this thinking, right? And then step 2 is I call someone. And it's typically my sponsor, right? But my sponsor is my CEO, but I have these board of advisors, good friends that I trust, right? And I'll call, typically Marty, I'll call Marty. And 2 things are gonna happen when I call Marty. Either I can hear the insanity come out of my mouth when I'm talking to him, telling him why I'm so angry, or 2, he'll put me in my place because he doesn't co-sign my bullshit. And he'll just be like, well, Chris, you may wanna look at it like this, right? And then I feel a little bit better, I put the phone down. And then the third thing I do is I go help someone else out because I'm not that important. And when I do this little 3-step process, 95% of the time, I feel a lot better, and it works for me. You get into the 11th step, right? Prayer and meditation. Absolutely beautiful, right? You pray and meditate to build your conscious contact with your higher power, to seek out their will, right? When I look at my life, right, and I look at all the great relationships I have, they have a lot of similarities, but one that really sticks out to me is I communicate with these people. The best relationships I have are people that I can openly communicate with. That's how I build my relationship with my higher powers. I talk to them through prayer and meditation. Now, prayer and meditation is like going to the gym, right? If I go to the gym, I'm gonna bench press the bar, right? Maybe slap on like some 10s, then some 20s. I'm not gonna be like 300 like Rob here, right? So it's a gradual increase, and over time, it developed into something really beautiful, and I'll share this quick story. So on my 11th step, I was like hitting it really hard, praying and meditating. And I love guided meditation, but it's really hard for me to, like, I'm not very disciplined, right? And so it's difficult for me to, like, be on the edge of my bed, put on the guided meditation, hear the waves crash and sit Indian style and be like, right? But it's difficult for me to do. I get great results, but I just don't do it all the time. But I listen to music. That's how I meditate, right? So, like, listening to music brings me back, right? So I'll listen to like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Under the Bridge. That will take me back. I'll listen to like CCR, Have You Seen the Rain? If I want to like think about my mom, I'll listen to like Tupac, Dear Mama, right? And I just go in my little thing and I meditate, right? So during my 11th step, I'm hitting the prayer and meditation hard, right? So, all right, Marty, you tell me to pray and meditate, I'll do it, right? And I'm doing it. And I don't know if anyone else can relate, but at this time I was 31. And in my 31 years of life, I could probably count on one hand, like where you're in a dream and you die in your dream and you wake up. Anyone else know what I'm talking about? Get some head nods. All right. Yes, and I would die and then I would wake up. But during this 2-week time period, I'm doing this prayer and meditation, right? And throughout the 2 weeks, there were 4 times where I was dreaming and I died. But the weird thing is I wouldn't wake up. And I would float in this black space from anywhere from like 10 seconds to like 20 seconds. And then I would wake up. And on the 4th and final dream, I'm dreams don't make sense. I'm driving like a 98 Honda Civic Accord Evergreen manual, 5-speed. I'm wearing like Timbs. I don't wear Timbs. Great shoes. But like it was just weird, right? And I drive into a brick wall going like 6 to 8 miles per hour. I die and I float in this black space, again. And I'm floating in the black space. And I said to myself, I'm like, oh man, this is what happens when we die. We just float in black space and that's it. And call me crazy, right? Call me crazy. A voice came in my head and said, Chris, death is only the beginning. Continue to do what you're doing and don't give up on yourself. And then I woke up. And I told a buddy of mine in Halfway House, played like, our 20th game of spades, and I was like, yo, Brandon, I'm like, this is what happened last night, man. He's like, dude, that's crazy, you should Google that. And I'm like, I'm not gonna Google it. I'm like, that's stupid. Well, fair enough. I'm on the top bunk, right? And I was right by the ceiling fan, so it was cold, and I couldn't sleep in halfway house. So I like, Google, what does it mean to die in your dreams, right? And I hold this near and dear to my heart. I like this, but what Google told me was that when you die in your dreams, it means you're leaving the past behind and you're moving on to new beginnings. And I could get down with that. So that was a really beautiful experience, and I continue to pray and meditate every day. Then you get into the 12th step, which is having had a spiritual awakening, right? As a result of working these steps, and we carry this message to fellow alcoholics. Sponsorship is the best kept secret of this whole program. It is no better feeling than helping out another man like Marty did for me. And I was taught, there's a part in the big book where it says the only way we're going to survive certain, doesn't say maybe, doesn't say possible, it says certain trials and tribulations is with intensive work with another alcoholic. And sobriety is not all rainbows, sunshine, unicorns, lollipops, rainbows, right? Now, stuff happens. And where are we? So be coming up on 2 years in July. My mother passed away at a very young age, and it flipped my life upside down. And it was a pain I have never felt before in my life. It was a very heavy weight, and I'm a firm believer that, I don't know what would happen, but I'm just very thankful that I was in the center of all of this when that happened, because I was devastated. And but this is the importance of working the program and getting a home group and leading into the fellowship, because the next day I go in my home group, which is 30 men, and I raise my hand and I'm bawling in front of 30 guys. I wasn't raised like that to be vulnerable, right? You get a scratch on your knee as a kid, your dad's like, suck it up, you're gonna be all right. I'm like, oh, okay, man. Now I'm in this room, bawling my eyes out, asking these guys that I want to get drunk and I don't know what to do, and I'm pleading for help. And 5 guys came up to me after the meeting. They're like, Chris, we got you. One guy, Brad, was like, I went through the same thing in early sobriety. This is what I did. If you need something, you call me. And man, one of my favorite words in the big book is this altruistic movement. And altruistic means that I will do anything for you and not expect anything in return. And the love and compassion in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is like nothing I've ever seen before in my life. And it's absolutely beautiful. And I just want to go I got a couple minutes. All right, couple things. So I look back, right? I reflect on, man, what was different this time? And I say to myself, man, what was different this time compared to the 2 previous times is I truly surrendered, right? And here's another analogy for you. So I love World War II. I love World War II documentaries. I love Netflix, right? And I watch these World War II documentaries. And I'm not a very educated person. So growing up, in high school, I read Hiroshima in history class, right? And I always thought we just dropped, 1 bomb on Japan, but we actually dropped 2, right? Little Boy and Big Boy. And so what happened was, during the war, we dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima. And Japan's like, holy crap, man, this is bad. So what happens? We go to the round table with Japan, right? And we're sitting at the round table, and America's like, all right, you got to surrender. And Japan's like, no problem. And we're like, cool. We want control of your government. They say, no problem. All right, fantastic. We want this naval base, we want that air base. And they're like, yeah, take everything, take it all, whatever you want. We're like, fantastic. And we also want control of your military. And they're like, nope, take everything, but you can't have our military. And America's like, no, that's not how this works. You got to surrender completely. And they're like, nope. And we walked away from the round table. And then what happened? We load up Big Boy. We dropped that on Nagasaki. And if you want to take it a step further, Japan probably had a spiritual experience when they saw Nagasaki. It's absolutely devastating. It's extremely sad. But right then, Nagasaki comes, and then we go back to the round table, and Japan's like, take everything. And that's how I was this last time around. I surrendered with no conditions at all. I walked in AA and I said, man, take everything. And here's the beautiful thing around it, right? About it. America, what did we do for Japan? We rebuilt their roads, their hospitals, their schools. We rebuilt Japan up, right? And that's what AA did for me. I came in, I said, I'm a scared little boy. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I have no idea what I'm doing. and I completely surrendered. I came in with my white flag, and AA rebuilt me to the man I am today. And I'm forever in debt to AA, and extremely grateful for that. So I really surrendered. And I love this analogy. This young man read How It Works, right? And there's a mic drop right in the beginning of how it works. So if you've ever been to a meeting, they say, "Oh man, I don't know why Jimmy keeps popping in my head." Like, "I'm Jimmy, I'm an alcoholic," right? And they said, "And this is how it works," right? And that first line, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. That is a mic drop of a line. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So back to my analogies, right? Here's a little analogy for you. So let's all pretend we're sitting here on Singer Island, right? And the one thing we want more than anything in life is Uncle Bob's apple pie back at home, wherever home is, right? It's the one thing we want in life more than anything else is Uncle Bob's apple pie. So what do? You see your therapist or whatever, you get on the phone, right? And you call up Uncle Bob. And you say, "Uncle Bob, man, I'm down here, and dude, I'm dying for your apple pie." And what does Uncle Bob do? "Yeah, no problem. I'll email you the recipe." And you're like, "Yeah, that's the one thing I want in life. More than anything else, I want your apple pie." Now he's sending me the recipe. Run it, right? And your therapist gets the email or whatever, right? They print out the recipe, right? And you get the recipe in your hand, and it's a 12-step recipe, right? And I'm not a baker, so please do not criticize my recipe, all right? So you get the recipe, and step 1 of the recipe is 4 diced apples. And you go, "I got this. I'm going to do 3 diced apples." And step 2 of the recipe is 1 cup of flour, and you put 2 cups of flour in. And then step 3 of the recipe is 1 cup of sugar, and you put a half a cup of sugar in. And then step 4 of the recipe is to preheat the oven at 350, and you preheat it at 400. And step 5 of the recipe is to bake for 15 minutes, and you bake it for 20 minutes. And I think at this point you're probably smelling what I'm cooking, right? 12-step recipe, right? Do you think when you open up the oven to take out Uncle Bob's apple pie, the one thing you want more than anything in life, and he gave you the recipe and you did whatever, you think when you pull that pie out of the oven, that's Uncle Bob's apple pie? I don't think it's going to be, right? So if you want what we have, just do what we do. I mean, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. And if there's any suggestions I can that I can give you, let me say this. This was important for me to come in. One of my biggest fears, and I hated this coming into the rooms, is like the dude that like was like, "Yeah, I had like 3 years, and I'm picking up a white chip, and like, oh man, this and that, and oh yeah, I once had 5 years, and I'm back in treatment." Like it's heartbreaking, right? And I remember like one time like sitting, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, am I just here for an oil change as well? Like I was very fearful of that. And then I read chapter 3 more about alcoholism, right? I call it the Relapse Prevention chapter, right? And it taught me that as long as I continue to enlarge my spiritual life one day at a time, I never have to fall back, ever, right? Because if you ever ask someone like, "Oh, what happened?" it always starts with the same 2 words. At least that's what I found. And it's always, "I stopped," followed by whatever they say. I stopped going to meetings, I stopped calling my sponsor, I stopped this, I stopped that, I stopped whatever. So I know one day at a time. I hated that, right? One day at a time, man. It's like, oh, I gotta sit here and white knuckle it one day at a time. Screw you. One day, 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time. But what that saying is, right, that one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, what they're saying is today is the most important day of your life, and to live in the present and enjoy it. That's what they mean by that, one day at a time. And, you know, what are you going to do for your recovery today? And I remember being like, "Oh my God, I got to stay sober for 50 years. How am I going to do that?" My sponsor would be like, "Yo, can you stay sober today?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." He's like, "All right, just worry about that. Stop future tripping. You can stay sober today, Chris, right? You tell me you can stay sober?" I said, "Yeah." "Okay, well then just do that for today. And when you wake up, thank God for another day, and ask him to bless you throughout your day. And when you go to bed, thank him for that. And when you wake up, thank him again. And just worry about staying sober one day at a time." I was like, "Oh, I can do that. That's pretty simple, right?" Any suggestions I can give you when you get out of this beautiful facility is to get a sponsor, get a home group, be of service. Definitely surround yourself with the people that are doing the right thing. Thank God I surrounded myself with people that are doing the right thing. If you're going to be crushing Red Bulls down on the main strip with your other, AA friends, probably not a good idea. Probably not a good idea. But surround yourself with people that are doing the right thing, that are not here on vacation, that want to get sober, that want to change their life. And yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. Thank you very much for letting me share.